The 1970s and 80s were supposed to be the golden age of Japanese motorcycles. While Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki were busy revolutionizing the motorcycle world with legendary machines, they also produced some absolute disasters that we'd rather forget. Today, we're diving into the dark side of Japanese motorcycle history. Let's dive in. Starting our countdown at number 15, these are the Japanese motorcycles that nobody wants back from the 70s and 80s. Number 15. Honda CX500. The Honda CX500 looked like it was designed by a committee of engineers who had never actually ridden a motorcycle. This water-cooled V-twin from 1978 was Honda's attempt at creating something different, but different doesn't always mean better. The CX500's biggest problem was its bizarre styling that looked more like a space shuttle than a motorcycle. The liquid-cooled engine was mounted transversely, creating a wide, awkward riding position that felt like straddling a refrigerator. The shaft drive system was prone to failure, leaving riders stranded on the roadside. But the real nightmare was the maintenance. The complex cooling system required constant attention, and when it failed, which it often did, the repair bills were astronomical. The plastic fairing cracked in cold weather, and the electrical system was a ticking time bomb. Even today, finding parts for a CX500 is like searching for unicorns, which explains why most ended up in scrapyards rather than garages. At number 14, we have the Yamaha XS1100, a bike that promised to be Yamaha's answer to the Honda CB750, but delivered more headaches than horsepower. Number 14. Yamaha XS1100. Launched in 1978, this four-cylinder monster was supposed to establish Yamaha as a serious player in the big bike market. The XS1010's four-cylinder engine produced impressive power on paper, but in reality, it was a maintenance nightmare. The shaft drive system was notoriously unreliable, with the final drive failing at the worst possible moments. The bike's weight distribution was terrible, making it feel like riding a piano on two wheels. The electrical system was another disaster. The charging system couldn't keep up with the bike's demands, leaving riders with dead batteries and no way to start the massive engine. The carburetors were impossibly complex to tune, and the air filter system was so poorly designed that it actually restricted airflow. Coming in at number 13 is the Suzuki RE5, a motorcycle so bizarre and problematic that it single-handedly proved why rotary engines don't belong on two wheels. Number 13. Suzuki RE5 Rotary. Released in 1975, this was Suzuki's attempt to revolutionize motorcycles with Wankel rotary technology. The RE5's rotary engine was thirsty beyond belief, consuming fuel at a rate that would make a muscle car blush. The engine ran extremely hot, making summer riding unbearable and causing frequent overheating issues. The complex cooling system required constant maintenance, and when it inevitably failed, the engine would seize completely. But the worst part was the reliability. The rotary engine's apex seals wore out constantly, requiring expensive rebuilds every few thousand kilometers. The unique fuel mixture requirements meant that most mechanics had no idea how to work on it. The bike's futuristic styling looked impressive in the showroom, but the reality was a machine that spent more time broken than running. Today, finding a working RE5 is nearly impossible, and the few that survive are more museum pieces than rideable motorcycles. Smash like if you love classics, and subscribe for more brutal breakdowns of the best and worst from motorcycle history. At number 12, we have the Kawasaki H2 Mach 4, a two-stroke triple that was less motorcycle and more mobile death trap. Number 12. Kawasaki H2 Mach 4. Introduced in 1972, this 750cc monster was designed to be fast, but nobody considered whether it should be controllable. The H2's two-stroke engine produced massive power in a narrow RPM band, making it virtually unrideable in normal conditions. The power delivery was so violent that it would literally lift the front wheel off the ground without warning. The frame was too flexible to handle the engine's power, causing severe wobbles at high speeds. The reliability was atrocious. Two-stroke engines require precise oil mixing, and the H2 system was prone to failure, leading to seized engines and stranded riders. The electrical system was primitive, and the brakes were completely inadequate for the bike's performance. The H2 earned the nickname Widowmaker for good reason. It was genuinely dangerous to ride. Insurance companies often refused to cover them, and many racing organizations banned them outright. Number 11 might surprise some people. The original Honda GL1000 Goldwing from 1975. Number 11. Honda GL1000 Goldwing. While later Goldwings became touring legends, the first generation was a study in how not to build a touring motorcycle. The GL1000's flat-4 engine was smooth but woefully underpowered for the bike's massive weight. The bike felt sluggish and unresponsive, making highway merging a terrifying experience. The suspension was too soft for the weight, causing the bike to wallow through corners like a boat in rough seas. The biggest problem was the complete lack of weather protection. For a bike marketed as a touring machine, the GL1000 offered no fairing, no windshield, and no protection from the elements. Riders were exposed to everything nature could throw at them. The seating position was uncomfortable for long distances, and the fuel range was inadequate for serious touring. The early Goldwings also suffered from electrical problems and premature wear of critical components. It took Honda several years and multiple redesigns to turn the Goldwing into the touring icon it eventually became. At number 10, we have the Yamaha XJ650 Seikka, a middleweight sport tourer that promised versatility but delivered mediocrity in every category. Number 10. Yamaha XJ650 Seikka. Launched in 1982, the Seikka was supposed to be Yamaha's answer to the growing sport touring market. The XJ650's biggest flaw was its complete lack of character. The four-cylinder engine was neither powerful nor efficient, sitting in a disappointing middle ground that satisfied nobody. The handling was vague and uninspiring, with suspension that was too soft for sport riding, but too harsh for touring comfort. The build quality was subpar even by 1980 standards. The electrical system was prone to mysterious failures, and the charging system couldn't keep up with the bike's electrical demands. The carburetor setup was overly complex and difficult to synchronize, leading to poor running conditions and terrible fuel economy. The Seikka's styling was forgettable, and its performance was even worse. Most riders who bought one quickly traded it in for anything else. Coming in at number 9 is the Suzuki GS750, a bike that should have been great, but was ruined by poor execution and countless design flaws. Number 9. Suzuki GS750. Released in 1977, the GS750 was Suzuki's attempt to compete with Honda's successful CB750. The GS750's four-cylinder engine suffered from chronic reliability issues. The camshaft was poorly designed and prone to premature wear, often requiring replacement before 32,000 kilometers. The valve clearances required constant adjustment, and the complex valve train was expensive to maintain. The electrical system was a nightmare. The charging system was inadequate, the ignition system was unreliable, and the wiring harness was poorly designed. The bike's handling was compromised by a flexi frame and inadequate suspension. The brakes were wooden and provided little stopping power. The GS750 also suffered from transmission problems, with the gearbox prone to jumping out of gear and wearing out synchros. Most GS750s were scrapped rather than restored, making them one of the least desirable classics from the era. At number 8, we have the Honda CB400T Hawk, a parallel twin that proved not all Hondas are reliable. Number 8. Honda CB400T Hawk. Introduced in 1978, the Hawk was supposed to be an affordable entry-level bike, but it turned into an expensive nightmare for many owners. The CB400T's parallel twin engine was plagued with problems from day one. The automatic cam chain tensioner was prone to failure, causing the chain to jump timing and destroy the engine. The charging system was inadequate, leaving riders with dead batteries and no way to start the bike. The transmission was equally problematic. The gear selector mechanism was poorly designed and prone to bending, making it impossible to shift gears. The clutch was weak and would slip under any kind of load. The bike's handling was terrible, with a front end that would shake violently at highway speeds. The rear suspension was so stiff that it felt like riding on wooden wheels. The CB400T earned a reputation as one of Honda's worst motorcycles, a title that still haunts the model today. At number 7, we have the Kawasaki KZ200, a small displacement bike that was big on problems and small on everything else. Number 7. Kawasaki KZ200. Released in 1977, the KZ200 was supposed to be an economical commuter bike, but it failed spectacularly at even that basic mission. The KZ200's single-cylinder engine was woefully underpowered, struggling to reach highway speeds even with a lightweight rider. The engine was also incredibly rough, vibrating so badly that it would loosen bolts and rattle parts off the bike. The electrical system was primitive and unreliable, with lights that dimmed at idle and a charging system that couldn't keep up. The build quality was terrible. The paint would fade and peel within months, the chrome would rust at the first sign of moisture, and the plastic parts would crack in cold weather. The suspension was too stiff for comfort, but too soft for any kind of performance. The brakes were adequate for stopping, but barely. The KZ200 was so bad that Kawasaki discontinued it after just a few years, and even today, finding parts for one is nearly impossible. Smash. Like if you love classics and subscribe for more brutal breakdowns of the best and worst from motorcycle history. Coming in at number 6 is the Yamaha XS400, a parallel twin that managed to combine the worst aspects of both British and Japanese motorcycle design. Number 6. Yamaha XS400. Introduced in 1977, the XS400 was Yamaha's attempt to create a middleweight standard, but it ended up being a standard disaster. The XS400's parallel twin engine was poorly balanced, creating vibrations that would numb your hands and feet within minutes. The engine was also prone to overheating, especially in stop-and-go traffic. The cooling system was inadequate, and the oil capacity was too small for the engine's needs. The electrical system was a complete mess. The charging system was weak, the ignition system was unreliable, and the wiring was prone to corrosion. The bike's handling was terrible, with a front end that would wobble at the slightest provocation. The rear suspension was so poor that hitting a small bump would launch the bike into the air. The XS400 also suffered from transmission problems, with a gearbox that was difficult to shift and prone to jumping out of gear. Most XS400s were abandoned rather than repaired, making them one of the most forgotten motorcycles of the era. At number 5, we have the Honda CX650 Turbo, a bike that proved turbocharging and motorcycles don't mix well. Number 5. Honda CX650 Turbo. Released in 1983, the CX650T was Honda's attempt to create the ultimate sport tourer, but it ended up being an ultimate nightmare. The CX650T's turbocharged engine was incredibly complex, with a turbocharger system that required constant maintenance and frequent repairs. The turbo lag was so severe that the bike felt like two different machines, sluggish at low RPM and violent when the turbo finally spooled up. The fuel injection system was primitive and prone to failure. The bike's weight was excessive, making it difficult to maneuver at low speeds. The center of gravity was too high, making the bike unstable in corners. The cooling system was inadequate for the turbocharged engine, leading to frequent overheating. The electrical system was overwhelmed by the bike's complexity, with numerous sensors and controls that would fail without warning. The CX650T was so problematic that Honda discontinued it after just 2 years, and today, finding a running example is nearly impossible. At number 4, we have the Suzuki GS450L, a parallel twin that managed to be both boring and unreliable at the same time. Number 4. Suzuki GS450L. Introduced in 1980, the GS450L was supposed to be a reliable middleweight cruiser, but it failed at being either reliable or appealing. The GS450L's parallel twin engine was poorly designed, with a balance shaft system that was prone to failure. When the balance shaft failed, the engine would vibrate so violently that it would crack the frame. The carburetor setup was overly complex for such a simple engine, making tuning nearly impossible. The bike's styling was generic and uninspiring, looking like every other motorcycle of the era. The handling was poor, with a front end that felt disconnected from the rear. The suspension was too soft for any kind of spirited riding, but too harsh for comfortable cruising. The electrical system was unreliable, and the charging system was barely adequate. The GS450L was so forgettable that most people don't even remember it existed, which is probably for the best. Smash like if you love classics, and subscribe for more brutal breakdowns of the best and worst from motorcycle history. At number 3, we have the Kawasaki KZ440 LTD, a bike that tried to be a cruiser but ended up being a disaster. Number 3. Kawasaki KZ440 LTD. Released in 1980, the KZ440 LTD was Kawasaki's answer to the growing cruiser market, but it answered all the wrong questions. The KZ440's parallel twin engine was underpowered and rough, providing neither the performance nor the character that cruiser riders wanted. The engine was also prone to overheating, especially in the stop-and-go traffic where cruisers are often ridden. The electrical system was primitive and unreliable. The bike's cruiser styling was poorly executed, with cheap chrome that would rust immediately and plastic parts that looked like they belonged on a toy. The riding position was uncomfortable, with forward controls that were too far forward and handlebars that were too high. The suspension was inadequate, providing neither comfort nor control. The KZ440 LTD was so bad that it actually hurt Kawasaki's reputation in the cruiser market, a reputation that took years to rebuild. At number 2, we have the Honda CM400A Honda-matic, a bike that proved automatic transmissions and motorcycles should never mix. Number 2. Honda CM400A Honda-matic. Introduced in 1979, the CM400A was Honda's attempt to make motorcycles more accessible to new riders, but it ended up being accessible to nobody. The CM400A's automatic transmission was the bike's biggest flaw. The 2-speed automatic was jerky, unpredictable, and prone to failure. The transmission fluid would overheat, causing the transmission to slip and eventually fail completely. The engine was also inadequate, producing so little power that the bike struggled to maintain highway speeds. The bike's styling was bland and uninspiring, looking more like a moped than a real motorcycle. The handling was terrible, with a front end that felt loose and disconnected. The brakes were wooden and provided little stopping power. The electrical system was unreliable, and the build quality was poor. The CM400A was so bad that it actually discouraged people from riding motorcycles, the exact opposite of Honda's intention. And at number 1, the absolute worst Japanese motorcycle that nobody wants back, the Yamaha XZ550 Vision. Number 1. Yamaha XZ550 Vision. Released in 1982, the Vision was supposed to be Yamaha's vision of the future of motorcycles, but it turned out to be more of a nightmare. The XZ550's V-twin engine was poorly designed and grossly unreliable. The engine would overheat constantly, causing the cylinders to seize and the pistons to weld to the cylinder walls. The cooling system was inadequate, and the oil capacity was too small. The fuel injection system was primitive and prone to failure, leaving riders stranded with no way to start the bike. The bike's styling was bizarre and polarizing, with a fairing that looked like it was designed by someone who had never seen a motorcycle before. The riding position was uncomfortable, with a seat that was too narrow and controls that were poorly positioned. The handling was atrocious, with a chassis that was too flexible and suspension that was completely inadequate. But the worst part was the reliability. The vision was so unreliable that Yamaha dealers often refused to work on them. The electrical system was a nightmare, with sensors and controls that would fail without warning. The transmission was weak and prone to jumping out of gear. The brakes were terrible, providing little stopping power and poor feel. The vision was so bad that Yamaha discontinued it after just 3 years, and today finding a running example is virtually impossible. The XZ550 Vision truly represents the absolute worst of 1980s Japanese motorcycle engineering. These 15 motorcycles prove that even the most successful manufacturers can produce absolute disasters. While the 1970s and 80s gave us some of the greatest motorcycles ever made, they also produced these mechanical nightmares that we'd rather forget. From overheating engines to failing transmissions, from terrible handling to unreliable electrical systems, these bikes had it all, and none of it was good. The good news is that these failures taught Japanese manufacturers valuable lessons that led to the incredible machines we ride today. Sometimes we have to learn from the worst to create the best.